Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the BG Independent Podcast. I am your host, Dustin Galish. On this episode, we talk about Porchfest Bowling Green as I sit down with Bob Midden and Brian Young, who are involved with the origins of the festival. And we talk about the start of the festival, its growth over its last 3 years, and what to expect at the 2024 event. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the BG Independent Podcast. All right, well, Bob and Brian, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. Another podcast is episode 11 now, which is not too bad. We've covered a lot of different subjects, different people from the community. David DuPont and I had done a Black Swamp preview last year that was fun. We kind of went through all the artists, talked about the history a bit. You know, David was there at the very, very beginning.
Oh, yeah.
I think he moved here the year that it started.
Oh, really?
There's sort of this weird sort of parallels between the two for him, which is that the first poster?
That was the first poster. In fact, that is either number 2 or number 3.
That's great.
It was First Federal at the time was the major sponsor. They got number 1.
Okay.
I got number 2 and 3. I knew it was going to be a big deal.
I mean, some reasons that there are parallels to these things. That's why I kind of want to talk to you guys. Because to me, Black Swamp Arts Festival, as big as it is now, if you get to the origin of it, was very much similar to how Porchfest has gotten its start. Mm-hmm. You know, it was something that was a labor of love. It wasn't even necessarily like a huge success the first year. Could even be, in many ways, Porchfest might have been more of a success the first year. And, you know, Black Swamp was a success, but financially it was tough. Mm-hmm. I think the weather was bad.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of things that happened that it would have been easy for them to have said, hey, let's just maybe that didn't work out. Now, with Porchfest, it felt like, you know, as we'll get into sort of how it started, that first year felt like, hey, this is great. It was post-COVID. It worked. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of hesitancy from some of the residents because they weren't sure what to expect.
It was hot.
And it was very hot, I guess. Yeah. So let's talk about that first. You know, the first one was in July, right? I think if I remember correctly. It was August.
Yeah,
okay.
It was in August, yeah.
And it's in June this year.
Right.
So
early June.
So the decision there was certainly the heat. If I remember, if you watch videos, there was videos from that from us playing with Trino Leaves where Garrett at that point had no shirt on. I think half the band was declothed just sort of out of necessity. It wasn't a statement necessarily. And so but let's talk about the first year. What was so unique about for you all to put that event on, and what was the first conversation to really get this thing all started? Because you had done those small Porchfest events before, not Porchfest, but just porch concerts.
This really sort of came out of COVID in a way because, you know, we were all in our houses. We weren't really socializing. We weren't coming in much contact with each other yet. But we were all out on our porches one Saturday evening, and a young woman who was good friends of one of the neighbors had been in Flag Corps in high school, and she just recently graduated, and she had a Flag Corps routine, and I think she was kind of doing it, but somebody said, well, why don't you do it for us out in the street? And so
on roller skates.
On roller skates, on rollerblades, and she wasn't proficient with rollerblades, but she's such a nice person and so unassuming, so unself-conscious and so wonderful. And she just agreed to do it because she realized it would be a nice thing for everybody to see, you know, have a little bit of entertainment, live entertainment after we'd been locked up in our houses for so long.
Do you remember the music?
Mm-hmm. It was, well, you say it.
It was ABBA, Dancing Queen.
Yeah, Dancing Queen. She put that on a boombox, and we were just all so thrilled to have some live entertainment and some music. And so we decided to do some porch concerts. We thought, well, this is a way we can have live music and enjoy it, even if we still have to be isolated. You tell about the next stage then.
We started that way, but. And I'm not even sure whose idea it was. It might have been yours. Like, we should do this more often.
I think it was probably your idea.
But I said, well,
most of the ideas regarding socializing and music and stuff come from Brian. He's the neighborhood instigator.
Well, that was you had some history in Dayton, correct, with doing stuff there, right? So
exactly.
This wasn't something that happened from completely no experience or no idea of how to organize something like this, correct?
Right. It definitely, I was involved in it for a few years in Dayton, but I was never an organizer of it.
Okay.
It was more, I was a porch, and then I got to know the people more, and I loved it. I thought it was just a blast, and I loved going around to all the different places and little porches for free, and it was to me it was like a great day for 4 hours. It was wonderful
on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah,
for me too. The street itself lends itself to Porchfest. It's not as though every place in town lends itself to that. Even the aesthetics of it, to me, when I first performed there, it feels like you're in this sort of. I explain it. It's almost like you're in the Wonder Years, or it's a throwback. It's sort of there's not a lot of traffic. There's nice big trees. It just sort of it does bring you in a little bit. It's sort of not every place in town lends itself to that. I think you feel like you were kind of lucky, where you all sort of decided to live in some ways that it worked out that way. That there was a collection of people who lived on a street, and it's outside of that street too. It's not just Eberly, but it still has really expanded. And that area is just beautiful.
Yeah,
it was a mixture of a lot of things, that just being that we were around musicians, and Bob and Mary were musicians, and they were our neighbors, and I, like Bob said, I'm the instigator, idea guy to bring it all together, and we have more musicians on that street. There was actually quite a few, musically inclined people on that street.
And we had these individual porch concerts, and then Brian said, well, why don't we do Porchfest like we did it, like he knew in Dayton, and he convinced us and actually led the charge then to get it all organized. And so I don't remember exactly when we started organizing it that year.
It was
it was kind of late.
Yeah, it was late.
We
were kind of behind the 8 ball the entire time.
Yeah,
I think we probably started in. I'm going to say,
I don't think
May
at the earliest.
Yeah, May, and then we had to get it all done. Well, but quite honestly, we didn't have to we didn't do sponsorships. We didn't do anything.
No,
basically, you and I funded it.
Yeah,
and it was we didn't have to do all that pre-work. We didn't have merchandise. We didn't have anything.
Right,
except we had to get some bands, and we had to get some porches.
Yep,
and that was it.
And make a program.
Yeah, make
schedule.
A program.
You made a map, I think, even that first year.
Yeah.
What's the relationship with the city? I mean, is there conversations going to be had there? I mean, I would assume, right? It's not something that can just organically just happen, right?
It did that first year, but then we needed.
Okay.
Yeah, the first year we kind of just, well.
I mean, the scope of the first year wasn't so big.
We had a conversation.
You did, okay.
First year, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it was, and they were remember, if you recall that they wanted us to sign this. I forget what they called it, but it was like basically some kind of permit, and it was 20 pages long, and I'm like, we don't need all this. It was something that
it was based on something for a much larger festival.
Yeah,
I would assume, right?
Yeah. Closing street down. We didn't want to. Yeah. We didn't have to close streets down. We didn't have to. We didn't feel we needed a lot of that stuff, and
it was just especially that first year, just a neighborhood event.
Pretty
bring
much
people together, but keep everybody in the yards, and only in the yards of the homeowners that wanted it, and and have a nice time socializing around music on a Saturday afternoon.
And we didn't expect that many people, and we really didn't get that many people.
Yeah, the first year, how much?
100 people?
20,
maybe?
I think.
I would say that's realistic. Yeah, about 100 or so, which felt successful in itself. I mean, again, wasn't
it was great.
It really was. I remember we talked
we had
afterwards.
7 bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
is that how many we had the first year?
Yeah, we had 8. 1 dropped out.
Oh,
okay.
right.
Wow.
Okay.
So let's take that event to get us to this year. Like, how would you describe the growth and what you've taken from the last, this is the 4th year now, of what are you taking from each year to build upon it? We talked a little bit before, the idea that you don't necessarily want it to get too much bigger. There's a sort of a bubble you want to hit, that you want to stay inside, but just refine it over the years.
Yeah.
But where are you guys at now, in the sense of where you feel like the festival is at for this year? What's unique about this year that you're bringing to it?
I think, first of all, there's more bands, and we have more bands, and we're starting
and more porches.
Okay.
How many porches are there in there this year?
There's 14 porches.
Wow.
And
Well,
there's
13 porches in Arlen's.
Okay.
Is Arlen's one of the 14?
No, 14 plus Arlen.
Okay.
Oh,
Wow.
Okay.
I think so, yeah. You might want to check me on that. But I mean, the bands there's more bands. There's we have more merchandise this year to play with and have fun with, and there's more porches, and it's just a bigger area too. We're really trying hard to like not have everybody sit in the core. We call the core where we start, and which is like there's 3 or 4 homes there. That's the first year. That's all we did was right there. But we're trying to move it out to the edges, more toward Worcester, more toward Pearl, over Arlen's
and
Goral.
in the alley off Hankey.
Yeah, and that alley.
And in Orleans.
And just because for one, you can't have that many people playing without with overlap, hearing each other. So you got to spread them out a little bit. But as far as uniqueness, I think it's pretty much that. I mean, we don't have we're trying to get different genres. We're trying to get, some singer-songwriter stuff than some bigger bands. I mean, your band is one of the big bands, and we have probably 3 or 4 like that now. So
it's interesting you say the singer-songwriter. I almost kind of feel like there never was any actually. It always was groups and stuff, and there's certainly a space for that, especially logistically. You can be creative with smaller performers and stuff like that too. So let's talk a little about some of the artists this year. That's some of the new ones.
Sure.
Honestly, Trino Leaves will be there. We've been there every year since the beginning. But let's talk about some of the artists. We don't have to get into super detail of each one, but just some of the more unique stuff. And how do you go about sort of people reaching out, you guys reaching out too? How does it work to bring in this music?
That's a good question, because it's not really a science.
It's just kind of a little bit, it's all over the place, right?
Well,
we do have a post on Facebook with a link to a band application.
Okay,
and
good.
every band who's performing completed an application. That's kind of a requirement. But many bands have contacted Brian, a few have contacted me, and so we always direct them, tell them, make sure they understand what the purpose of Porchfest is, how it's structured and how it runs and the nature of it, and be sure that they're getting, it still is something they really want to do, and then direct them to the band application to make sure we get the information we need in order to make good selections. We want that selection process to be as fair and equitable as possible. Of course, we know a lot of the people, and we've got to know who the band is to be able to make those selections. But nevertheless, it's equal in the sense that everybody submits the same kind of information and responds to the same questions, and we use that information for making the selections. And as Brian said, we pay attention to the genres. We want a good variety of genres, but we want genres that are not going to be too wild, too loud. It is in a neighborhood.
Sure.
And so we've got to respect the decibel levels, and so but those are the kinds of bands that have applied, frankly.
Yeah, it feel weird to start getting applications from like metal bands from Philadelphia. Like, I heard Porchfest is great, guys. I mean, you can kind of read from looking into the festival itself.
Right.
Even with there's porches, these aren't huge sound systems. Most people are using their own amps. You guys do have some nice PAs and stuff too. It's not as though it's all just little amps, but there's a certain level that and for me, the quality I think is unique to me, because I talked to Brian before, even last year. I've always been like, hey, maybe we should start to think about bands from out of town. Maybe we bring some of those in. But I think his hesitant was like, I think we kind of like this idea of it being local. And I think I've come to sort of see the power of that too. It's sort of, because my brain always thinks, maybe people don't want to see the same bands every year, and us being one of those. But I think, no, this is almost like a family reunion. It's a celebration. You see all these familiar faces. And like, that's more of what's the draw of it too. It's not just sort of, I want to see the best music I can possibly see, which you are seeing great music. I mean, Moz the Attic are there. I mean, there's bands that are just incredible,
But you do have a point, and one point that is new this year, I think we've discussed and we brought into our thinking, is we do want to rotate out. We don't want to have all the bands this year we had, I don't know, I think 7 bands that were there last year and the year before. So we're trying to start with this thought process of, let's have a band sit out for a year or whatever. And so actually this year, Bob's band Tori is going to sit out this year and then come back next year. And we're going to do that just to keep a little bit fresh.
There'll always be some consistency, but also some variety. And in fact, this year we've got a couple bands from out of town. We've got one band that's going to be coming in from Georgia, a gig
really?
in Georgia the night before, and another band that's coming from overseas. I don't even know where they're coming from out of the country, but they
happen to be here, so
yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, that's good to me. I mean,
but that they applied,
right? And they're scourging the internet looking for festivals. They look at the pictures. They're like, this is probably a great gig. Yeah.
Pretty good musicians.
Cool.
So
we didn't search them out. They applied.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun. I mean, that's almost the dream you want. Is as you create something, at least have some options. And again, I always thought it's similar to Black Swamp, where you have. I think of like the smaller stage where you work, where the core of that in many ways is to bring in some of the bigger acts to do acoustic, but also it's a way to funnel in the local stuff to let people know what's going on locally. And I still think I'm sure that's part of Porchfest as well. So
you get sometimes, like we said, we got I don't know if we call it lucky, but fortunate for a new band to come in every once in a while and no one's heard from around here. And that's okay. We'll look at that. And when that's one thing is we have a lot of bands to choose from, which is lucky for us right now.
Yeah,
there's a lot of bands that sign up for this, and
well, it's a free event too. You know what I mean? And I think people have to realize that there's going to be some limitations to what you're going to do.
Right.
Unless you don't have some oil tycoon who's living on Worcester. It's like, oh, here's $5 million. Let's make this beautiful. Maybe back in the early 1900s, when that was going on more. No, I would believe me. I would have talked to him already about a few things. But the free festival, I mean, Grounds or Black Swamp Arts Festival, the same thing, right? It's a free festival.
Right.
I'm sure it took them a while to start to build up a reputation, and then maybe they found a way to start to generate money to bring in larger acts, and there's a cycle to that. But people can't be too picky when it's free, And a big part of Black Swamp, why it works, is they have the alcohol tent. There's other things that help fund these things. For sure, it's a big part of it.
Oh yeah.
And you guys have the merchandise now, which I think helps. It helps.
Yeah.
I'm sure give you a budget, more of a budget to work with, an idea of how to grow each year, gauge growth, and I think that's good too. And word of mouth with just having stuff out there that people can see. So let's talk about the word of mouth thing. I think that's, to me, the most powerful aspect of this thing now. I think is the growth has had to have been just through word of mouth.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Really, some promotions, we're talking here today. We've done some. There's some postering, things like that. But
you did a great video in the past, and there've been a little bit of promotion in the local news, and then we do a bit of boosting on Facebook or a poster, and try to get the other bands to share. But that's it. It is pretty. We don't frankly want it to be too big.
Sure.
Because then we do have to get a permit.
And then we do have to shut down the streets.
Yeah, there is that stuff. Yeah, and if you start to bring in more people from out of town, this makes me think of the old music festival here. I don't know if you were here, Bob, when the early 80s, late 70s music festival that happened here, where they brought all these rock bands in over at the old football stadium. The Poe Ditch Festival. There it is. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar.
Mary was there.
Yeah,
she knows
good.
all
All right.
about it.
So
She's
to me, that's the only
told
thing I can think that's sort of relative to like the hesitancy of maybe why Porchfest had some people who are like, I don't know if this should work, right? They're like, they were having some flashbacks of Poe Ditch. Yeah. This is going to be the next Poe Ditch, and all of a sudden, Eberly is just a wasteland of debris and debauchery. And I think there was
Mary's dad has a story. He was he worked as a sheriff's deputy at times, and he was the deputy, and there was some. I don't even remember the name of the band, some big band that he had to deal with at one point. Yeah. So
it's a huge deal. I mean, the town is still recovering from it. At least some of the older generation, I would say people probably 10, 15 years older than you who are still who were here to sort of experiencing it. But I think that gets into some of the Porchfest hesitancy that we can talk about, like of why there was any sort of hesitancy from it, was that this is going to turn into a party that's going to be uncontrollable. And that hasn't been the case. It's been one of the most respectful concert experiences you could really. I don't know how you could think go any better. There hasn't really been any instances I'm aware of. Maybe some people walking on some yards when they shouldn't have, but we figured it out.
Yeah, and in fact, in the last 2 years, I'm not aware of any problems at all. Not even any litter. We had a patrolman assigned the year before last, afterwards he told us it had been one of his most enjoyable assignments because there were absolutely no problem. He didn't have to speak to anybody, and he got to walk around and listen to great music on a pleasant Saturday afternoon with a lot of really nice, friendly people. And that's at the heart of it, It really, what it's about is bringing people together, bringing people in the neighborhood together, maybe some others, strengthening our sense of belonging. And one of the things that warms my heart and makes it all seem worthwhile is seeing all these people just being so friendly and at ease and relaxed and enjoying each other's company with no attention whatsoever to some of the issues that are otherwise dividing our society. Getting way beyond that, ignoring that, enjoying life, enjoying others, and having a great time on a pleasant Saturday afternoon. It's very mild and mellow. People are, like I said, sort of relaxed, and everything is sort of easygoing and pleasant. And so, I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine a better way to spend a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already looking forward to it myself, right? It's my son's birthday is June 6th, so he's kind of locked into this sort of sweet spot too. So it's kind of like a certain time of year. School's over.
Right.
I think it ends like the week before, which is nice too. And it's super. I mean, there's so many kids last year. I remember that was my favorite memories was performing, where you see a lot of kids just dancing and just in the moment.
Yeah.
Because again, the neighborhood aspect of it really is important because it is. I can attest now. I know my neighbors. There's like a little bubble that I know who my neighbors are. There's I know the ones right across, the ones next door, and the ones next to me. And then it kind of gets foggy after that.
Right.
I don't really know a lot of them. And I think this has been a good way to learn about your neighbors more and also sort of take advantage of a situation that we all love this sort of experience collectively. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're really looking forward to this year. As Brian said, we've got 18 bands and 14 porches and over at Arlen's, and I'm hoping that everything goes as well as it did last year. You always have your fingers crossed about the weather until
that's the biggest
second.
one, right? Yeah. Is there any backup plan where you say, hey, there's this sort of doomsday scenario. There's no way this is going to happen. Do we run it the day after? Is that something you ever talked about?
Okay. Last year we had a really solid backup plan. We had sheltered locations for every band.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
We haven't developed that plan yet this year.
I don't think we're good enough.
And I'm afraid it will be a lot harder because we have more bands. We can certainly accommodate probably about 2/3 of them, but it gets pretty tricky. We've got overlaps in the different areas, and so you almost have to have a good sheltered location in each of those, what would you call it, regions, and we don't. Well, now the porch at Worcester and Eberly is kind of sheltered.
Yeah.
You'd have to bring the audience up on the porch.
Yeah.
Brian, we've got the speakeasy in the center, and Sean even has a place, a garage. But I don't know if those two might bleed some.
Sure.
Maybe it might be okay. Mary Cassidy's yard is in between. And then we've got Arlen's, and we could bring more people over in Arlen's. But I don't know that we've got any other indoor locations.
It'll be tough if it rains. We just got to do a big rain dance before.
Yeah.
Maybe the Samba Bateria. That's the symbolism of them.
That's
it really is. That's the good luck charm.
That's why it's been so good. The weather's been so good.
They show up. They clear the area.
They drive the clouds right away.
I'm trying to remember if it wasn't last year or the year before, there was some. It was possible, or if there was definitely some potential for rain. If I remember,
It was the year before last.
I think it was. Yeah. I think remember because we were performing and it ended up working out.
It worked out.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So far, so good.
Yep.
crossing my fingers here.
Yep.
Well, if people, listening to this podcast want to get involved with it, I think that's another question too.
Yes.
I mean, this isn't something that is just closed off to everybody who lives on Eberly Street. There's definitely a community that's grown from that. But how do people get involved? This is definitely a volunteer, based thing similar to the Black Swamp, where this is not possible without volunteers making it happen. So how can people sort of navigate that and just get involved with Porchfest?
There's a Sign Up Genius form that people can complete in order to volunteer, and it lists all
on
the different
Facebook.
And there's a link to it on the
Facebook
BG. What's it called? What's the
BG
official?
Porchfest.
BG Porchfest Facebook page.
Okay.
So they should look for that, find the post about volunteers, follow that link to the Sign Up Genius form, and submit that to volunteer and be able to help out. On the day of Porchfest, there might be some gaps that develop, and they can always check with Brian or me or Mary Dennis or Bertie Simcox. The people who are involved will have. Are we going to have vests this year? What are we going? What was the final decision?
Yeah, we had. We're going to have vests for we call them the ambassadors, the ones that are walking around, so they know who to ask questions to.
Right.
The people who are setting up, who are tearing down, no need for that.
Yeah,
but I think we'll try and mark the people who are walking around,
who are information sources.
Yeah, information sources, and making sure that there's no litter. Basically making sure everything's staying the way we like it to stay. So, but yeah, they'll be marked with some kind of like volunteer vest.
Yeah, and they help make sure people understand where it's okay to stand or sit, put your chairs, and where it's not, and make sure they know where the porta potties are and where the litter boxes are, and how to tip the bands, because that's very important. So that's one of the important elements is that role, the ambassador role. But people can ask them, where's Brian, where's Bob, where's Mary, where's Bertie? And
I was thinking about getting like walkie-talkies between like several of us this year.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it would just look cool. I mean, it makes everything seem way more legit.
Walkie-talkie.
Yeah, these guys.
The phones don't. I don't seem to hear my phone or feel it. It's in my pocket when you got bands going around, and I got all this excitement. I'm like, should we get walkie-talkies like the people at Black Swamp have?
Yeah.
It's not that big yet, but it's getting there. But then, actually, maybe it's not a bad idea because it has spread out enough to where there might be some communication that's needed. Granted, cell phones are their own thing, but you don't know, people don't wear their cell phones on their side.
It is extended all the way along Eberly Avenue.
It is all the way.
Bands at the north end and bands at the south end and bands over on Goral and in the alley and over at Arlen's. So it is spread out quite a bit now.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to find someone who does drone work. I'm being a videographer myself. I haven't gotten a license for it, I understand, but I think it'd be fun to see an overhead view, the thick of it, to kind of see the town, to go down the street and fly over.
Black Swamp does that.
So if anybody's listening to this at some point and you're into that, please let us know, because I think that would be just a cool shot to see, to sort of get a perspective on this all kind of hovering around one street, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little about this. Is kind of like the final thing I want to talk to you guys about. This is almost a thank you to you guys. It's like the hospitality aspect of it for me as a musician performing. You're not being necessarily paid, and musicians sometimes you expect, I should be paid for my thing, blah blah blah. But for me, you guys have provided a hospitality aspect of it and given the people opportunity to donate as well. But I think, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm already looking forward to that post-gig meal. And I think a lot of us who are musicians, I'm being straight with you, like we work in strange ways. Money is cool, but there's something about food after a gig. It's almost, I might even say it's the most enjoyable meal that I ever eat is the meal after a performance. And I think I want to say that the after party to me has always been something unique for the people involved and the musicians, and the food is fantastic.
And you can share it with other musicians and the Porchfest volunteers.
We invite the volunteers too,
and
the musicians. So
and so that social aspect of it, I think, as you say, after the event, it's kind of like that glow, and it really is a warm feeling and a great time and a wonderful way to end it all.
And I'm with
Black
you.
Swamp is similar as a musician. They had this sort of side tent where they had this food over there, and you just kind of there's something about that I've loved that you've kind of kept that tradition. Having that space at your place, Brian, is wonderful for that. I mean, it's almost seemingly made for that. The speakeasy and just that area back there. Yeah. But where did the food sort of come from? Who was the madman that kind of sort of said, "Hey, I make something really tasty, but let's build on that." Sort of.
Yeah, I guess that was me. I think. Well, I like doing smoked foods. I have a smoker. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I thought it would be kind of neat. It was an opportunity to fill up this smoker full of meat.
Sure, you get an excuse to really use it. You know what I mean? For
so
sure.
I'm like, I'm going to feed them all.
Yeah.
So, it started at that, but that was only like the protein portion of the thing. So all the committee people, it seems like many of the volunteers all brought all these side dishes. So it really is a feast.
Yeah.
When you think
it's kind of like a stone soup feast, in the sense that there are contributions of so many different kinds of food by so many different people.
Yeah.
It's almost a loaves and fishes kind of situation where you're able to feed everybody with one smoker full of meat.
Yeah. And I enjoy doing that. I mean, I get up 5 o'clock that morning and I never get up. You can attest to this, but I never get up that. Sure. If I was been on vacation with me, there's no way in hell. But I do that day.
Yeah.
I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to put the meat on the smoker, and so it's done when we all come over there to feast.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate what you guys have done. I think as a musician, I appreciate it. As someone who lives in that area of town, I appreciate it because it's giving that area of Bowling Green more attention. It's a beautiful area to live. I love living on that part of the city. And I never would have thought that a street like that would have sort of become a place where there's a music festival, for whatever you want to call it, or a porch fest, or it's just it's a community event that I'm looking forward to, and hopefully it's something that is here forever. That you guys have created something that will stick as people move on and different people move. That there's enough. Hopefully you've created something that will keep going. I think that's the beauty of longevity in these things. I think is the ultimate dream. I think some ways
it gets easier and easier. I mean, we make it harder and harder because we make it bigger and we make more things we got to do, and we got ideas every single year. Someone brings in a new idea, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
and then we with that, so it becomes. I guess we put it on ourselves, but as far as the baseline goes, we've kind of got that down. And so
we meet every month, though.
We do meet every month, and there's 12 of us on our committee. So, and everybody's pretty busy. Mm-hmm. So it's I've learned to delegate a little bit better. And that first couple of years, I was just going crazy. Just crazy. I can't tell you how many hours.
He can still improve on that a little bit.
So it was, but we're getting better at people knowing what they're doing, and I much more relaxed lately. Even the committee members are telling me, God, you're so much more relaxed this year because, everybody's doing the right things.
Well, and we've got the bank accounts established. We know how to get invent insurance. People know what it's all about. There's, you don't have to educate as many people about what's going on, what needs to be done, how to do it. And so those kinds of things are making it a little easier, even though it is bigger and a bit more complex.
That's true because, the first year, the only person who really knew was me. Mm-hmm. And I was just trying to get everybody on the same page. Yeah. But now everybody's on the same page. So it's a lot easier.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, thank you guys so much. I think I've really enjoyed this conversation. Being a part of Porchfest for the last few years, I remember having a conversation with you at some point. I remember one night hey, what about Porchfest? I was like, that's a good idea. I mean, then 4 years later, this is where it's at now. Mm-hmm. It's really awesome to see. And I hope it grows. It's not going to be as big as a Black Swamp. That's not the point.
That's not the point.
But it's in the same sort of mindset, and it's part of something that we look forward to every year now.
Yep.
And I think that's important. The more we have of those, the better quality of life we're going to have here in Bowling Green too. So,
like I said, we all agree on this point. But it's like we just want it to be a nice, get everybody out, get everybody talking to each other. get some entertainment. And we appreciate the bands who come in and do this. I know it's kind of a hassle, unloading, loading, and doing that. So that's why we, eat and drink, at the end. And we owe a lot to a lot of people. The porch hosts, it doesn't come together on just Bob and I and Mary. I guess we're the principals of it, but it's a real community event. I mean, it takes a lot of people to bring it together.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you sitting down. And
would it be all right if we mention?
We should probably mention the date too. That's probably not a terrible idea, right? I was about to say. I mean, I'll probably put that in. I'll put that somewhere in the.
Sure.
But yeah, what is the date?
It's Saturday, June 8th.
Okay.
And from 1:45 to 7 p.m.
Great. Okay.
And we do have some other concerts coming up. One we don't need to publicize because it's already sold out.
Yeah.
Do you just follow the Porchfest page for those sort of events as well in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just so people know that there are other opportunities to enjoy music in the Speakeasy.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're interested, they should watch the Speakeasy Facebook page.
Yeah.
Okay.
And take advantage of those opportunities also.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, guys.
But thanks so much, Dustin, for all that you do to help
we appreciate it.
raise awareness because people can't take advantage of it and enjoy it and benefit from it unless they're aware of it. And it's such an important role. And so I'm so glad we have somebody like you who's doing that.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Again, thank you.
BG Independent News is made possible with support from people like you. Help keep news in Bowling Green free and accessible to everyone by becoming a contributor today. Visit bgindependentmedia.org/support to help Bowling Green's best source for local news, arts coverage, reviews, opinions, campus information, and community updates.